Now on Radio 4, it's time for the Call You and Yours Budget Special with Winifred Robinson and Paul Lewis in Salford.
Hello and welcome to a phone-in all about the budget. You and Yours, Radio 4's consumer programme, is joining forces with Moneybox, the specialist personal finance programme, to answer your questions about the budget and how it will affect you.
Perhaps you're a first-time buyer and you want to know about the government offer of help with a deposit. Maybe you run your own small business and want the small print of that £2,000 cut to national insurance contributions for your staff. What about the childcare vouchers and the new scheme that replaces them? Might you qualify?
Call 03700 100 444 if you'd like to come on the programme. A call costs the same as an 01 or an 02 number. You can email us, youandyours@bbc.co.uk, or send us a text to 84844. You'll be charged your standard operator message rate for that, and we may call you back on that number. Or you can tweet as you listen. At Radio 4, you need to use the hashtag #YouandYours.
And you can listen for free, of course, and to be sure we get the answers right, we've brought in an expert panel. There's Flora Maudsley Barton. She can answer questions on savings and tax. She's a qualified financial planner, Director of Parsonage Financial Planning. Phil Gulnick is the Director of the online benefits calculator, entitled2.com. Elaine Clark is a tax expert and Managing Director of cheapaccounting.co.uk. She deals with a lot of small businesses, among other things. And David Hollingworth is Head of Communications at London and Country Mortgage Brokers for those mortgage questions.
The budget was either a triumph or a tragedy, depending on which headlines you read. The Sun calls it a flatline budget, the Mirror a fudget budget, the Independent a drown your sorrows budget. The Daily Telegraph and the Times agree that George Osborne is pinning his hopes on a housing boom. So what do our panellists think? What cheered them up? What made them miserable? Flora, if we could start with you very quickly as you listened to him when he was on his feet. What did you like? What didn't you like?
Well, I'm not a beer drinker, so that part of it didn't interest me too much. It was a quiet one from a financial planning point of view. Everything that's changing from our point of view has already been announced. The thing that really surprised me was the announcement for the Help to Buy. It surprised me because I'm not sure that I feel that the housing market needs its prices pushing up at the moment. I know, I agree people need help to move, but I'm not sure I agree that the prices are currently low.
Elaine Clark?
I think the £2,000 employers' national insurance relief came as a bit of a surprise, a nice surprise for some. But again, I saw very little help for what I call the real small business in the UK, the one-man bands, to use that analogy, that are really trying to bring self-employment as a way of earning a living these days.
Phil Gulnick?
Well, in terms of benefits, it was quite a quiet budget. So the big surprise for me was all the changes with mortgage help and the scheme to expand the amount of money going into first-time buyers and the guarantee. I wasn't expecting that at all.
And David Hollingworth, you're the mortgage man. Were you expecting all this help with mortgages?
No, I think we expected to see some kind of extension of schemes that have gone before it, but actually there's some real changes here that could make a very real difference to what remains a pretty constrained mortgage market.
Well, thanks for all those surprises and things you weren't expecting and things you liked or didn't like. Let's take some calls now. Carol is in Kingsbridge in Devon, who's got a question. Carol, what's your question?
Good morning. I've got two questions in connection with the extended first buy scheme. What little I've read, it's not just first-time purchasers now, but it does apply only to new homes, and there's a 20% shared equity element. Is that right?
Well, let's put that to David Hollingworth. He's the expert on these things. David?
That's a nice summary of it, really. The term there, first buy, and we've had many different names over the years of similar schemes, which are essentially shared equity. So there's an equity loan involved here, which is coming from the government to the borrower, up to 20%. The home buyer also puts in 5% of their own, but that hopefully makes life a little bit more affordable for them and helps deal with the issues of getting a deposit together. The difference here is that it is extended beyond first-time buyers only, but it remains available only on new build property.
And David, just to explain the equity bit, it means that in a sense this government agency owns 20% of your home, and when you sell it, what happens to that?
When you come to sell, you pay back 20%. So if your property is increased in value, then you will be paying in cash terms a larger amount back. So if it doubles, that loan you pay double back.
And if it falls?
If it falls now, there's little detail that I've seen so far, but going from the first buy scheme, all the government equity loan schemes have tended to share in the downside as well.
As well as the upside. Though, of course, as Flora, you were saying, your concern is that this will push house prices up, which maybe isn't the best thing for the great generality of first-time buyers.
That's right. I think what we'll end up with is a bit of a tug of war between the house prices on one side, set by the people who are selling the houses, and the lenders on the other side, who are taking affordability a lot more seriously than they did in the run-up to this.
But David, wasn't there a second strand to this where there is help underwriting mortgages for people buying not only new houses and up to a value of 600,000?
Which is really significant, I think. It doesn't start till January, so there's nothing concrete that we can point to at the moment, but the aim is very clearly to incentivise lenders and take away some of the risks that are perhaps preventing them from offering mortgages to those with small deposits. So the ultimate aim should be that we will see more mortgages available to those with small deposits of just 5%, and hopefully as well also at better rates than are currently available. There's a real smattering of deals at that level, but the rates can be around 6%.
So Phil, so David, just to be clear, there are two separate schemes, though they're under the same umbrella. One is the shared equity, where the government or the agency provides 20% of the value of the property. The second one is this mortgage guarantee. Now, that was completely new, wasn't it? And that starts next January.
That is new. I suppose it shares some genes with perhaps the new buy scheme, but that was limited to new build property again, but again aimed at improving high loan to value or mortgages for those with small deposits. This is open market, and that's where it will make a real difference, and it's a real stride forward, I think.
Yes, and value up to 600,000, and also any income limits that there were on the old scheme are going from the 1st of April, so it can be...
And remortgage as well, Paul. It will apply for remortgaging.
Ah, right. That's very interesting. And when you've got this 20% loan, when you've borrowed this on the first bit of the scheme, although you have to share the value, the rise or fall of the house, do you pay any interest on that?
Not for the first 5 years. Beyond that, there is a small interest charge, originally set at 1.75% on that equity loan, and then that rises year on year, linked to inflation.
Right, quite a small, a modest interest anyway. Okay, Carol, does that answer your question, Carol?
That answers that question. I've got one further quick
question.
Oh,
be quick then, be quick. There's a lot of people waiting.
In the southwest, we have some very high-priced property, and young people can't afford to buy. Would they be eligible for one of these schemes if they had more than 5%, but they wanted to retain some of their own capital and buy a property so that their mortgage borrowing wouldn't be as high? So suppose somebody, for instance, had a 10% deposit, could they keep back 5% of it and then apply for the scheme and then keep their 5% as extra capital in the property, or is it limited to borrowers who really only have 5%?
Flora?
It is a loan of up to 20%, so you have got to put in at least 5%. I think if you can...
If you had other capital, you could withhold that and use that to put into the property so that
I don't see why not.
No, there's no means testing. There's no thought of checking how much money you'll still have.
Don't see why not. Anyway, thank you for your questions, Carol. I hope that helps.
We're going to Sarah in London now. She is a single parent. She wants to know how the budget will affect her. She works part-time. Sarah, what exactly was in there that you thought might affect you?
Well, hello.
Hello.
I was just particularly interested to know, as a single mother of 3 children, how will single parents be affected by budget changes? I work part-time, and I've just been quite nervous about if the changes will be dramatic or not. I know quite a few people in my situations are.
Phil, you said it was a quiet budget for benefits and tax credits and all the rest, but there were some announcements just beforehand, weren't there?
Well, there was an announcement on childcare. Do you pay for childcare, Sarah?
Yeah. I have 2 children at school who go to after-school clubs and a younger child in nursery.
OK, if your younger child is going to be under the age of 5 in the autumn of 2015, so that's 2.5 years away, you might get extra help then through the new system of a replacement for childcare vouchers, which will go to many more people. So if that's relevant to you, and you've got to have quite a young child for that to be relevant, then there's a potential source of help there. In general, the budget didn't really do anything on benefits or lone parents in particular. The only thing you might benefit from would be the increase in the personal allowance to £10,000, not this April, the following April.
Yes, I mean that helps with that. But do you get benefits at the moment, Sarah?
No, I work.
Right, so you don't get child tax credit or working tax credit.
Oh yes, sorry, yes, yes, I get child tax credit, some working tax credit as well, and I earn less than 10,000 a year. So, and my youngest will be at nursery for another year and a half. So, I just wondered how we might be affected, because it's quite a struggle.
The budget itself hasn't affected you, Sarah. What's going on in the background? Is there various changes to tax credits now because of your income? The child tax credit for people at the lower incomes is going up a bit, so you'll probably find your income go up a bit in April. But there are various other changes going on to tax credits, which mean the situation varies a lot by individuals. And in the background is this thing called universal credit, which will start coming in not this April, but in a year's time. So your immediate situation is, because you've got a low income, you're going to benefit a bit from the increase in child tax credit in April. But in the longer term, you're going to have to do a calculation to see how you're affected. Yeah.
A calculation, I have to say, that's beyond most of us, Phil. I think only your computer can do that. But it's worrying, though, isn't it? I mean, it's one of your points, Sarah. You're worried about what's happening, and it's very hard to find out, because that kind of anxiety when your income is low is obviously a concern.
Yeah, exactly, and just particularly because if you don't have that childcare, or if you don't have family to support you, then you can't work. It's just that basic, and it's quite a thing to juggle three.
Okay. Well,
anyway, I don't want to end. There's about to be some background noise. I probably should come off the line.
I'm going to plug Phil's website now, which is entitled2.co.uk, and if you put all your details in there, it will tell you what you can get. And you've got the 13, 14 rates in there already, Phil, so that's a help to people.
That's right. So if you select at the bottom of the page after you click start that you want 13, 14, it'll work out your entitlement next year. My rough guess for you, Sarah, is that your tax credits will probably go up a little bit given your income.
Oh, that's good news, Sarah. Thanks very much for your call. You can call 03700 100 444 if you want to come on the programme. A call costs the same as to an 01 or 02 number. You can email you and yours at bbc.co.uk, or you can text us 84844. You'll be charged your standard operator message rate, and we can call you back on that number. Or, of course, you can tweet, as you've listened to Radio 4, using the hashtag you and yours at Radio 4, at BBC Radio 4, I should say.
Chris Sutton is 61 and will be 62 in May. He was dismayed by what he heard in the budget. Chris, why?
Well, it was just with the Chancellor bringing forward the introduction of the flat rate for the basic state pension to 2016. I'm now old enough, or indeed young enough, you might say, to qualify for that. I wouldn't say I was dismayed. I'm more curious. I'm retired with a company pension, and I'm unclear what the fact that this company, the company pension, was contracted out, and what effect that will have on the flat rate. Is it really a flat rate?
That's very
puzzled looks around the table, I'm afraid.
I picked up on websites that if you have a pension, a company pension which was contracted out, there may indeed be a reduction to the 144 flat rate. Or have I got that completely wrong? It'd be nice if I had.
I believe the answer to that question is that it sets the 144 sets a minimum, and so they take into account your extra entitlements are additional to it. So I think what it means in your case is that if you've got a reasonable pension that you've built up because you've been in a pension number of years, the introduction of the flat rate pension actually won't make a real difference to you. The people it makes a difference to are people who have got interrupted pensions, haven't received the full amount, haven't been building up the state earnings-related pension scheme, now known as the state second pension scheme. For people who've got good pensions, it's an underpinning, and by the sound of it, you're one of those people who it just will underpin the amount, so it won't affect you personally.
Chris, can I ask your date of birth?
Yes, it's May 1951.
All right. Well, you will get the pension then, because the key date for men, as far as I can work out this morning with the DWP, is 11th of April 51 or later. You'll get it.
Right.
For women, it's 6th of April 53 or later. They will get it.
Right.
And what will happen on that date is the DWP will look at your national insurance record and what you're entitled to, and it will give you a protected amount.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that's more than the flat rate pension, you'll get the protected amount.
Sure.
If it's less than it, you'll get the flat rate pension. And of course we talk about £144, but by 2016 it will be a bit more than that, maybe 150 or something like that. So at the point of change, no one should lose out, but of course in the long term, people who've only built up a small amount will get less than they would have done under the present system. Others will get more because, as the Chancellor has said, it's neutral. It will cost as much each year as the present system. So I hope that helps. Thanks.
Sounds like good news. Thank you.
It's 12:20. You're listening to a special phone-in here on Radio 4 about the budget. We would like to hear from you if you want to know how the budget will affect you. Our lines have been open since 10 and our reporter Samantha Fennick is in our phone room with the people who are taking the calls. Sam, what are people asking about?
Well, there's a lot of people asking about pensions and childcare, tax questions as well. We've also had a lot of emails in from people who are a little bit confused. A lot of emails from listeners concerned about the lack of detail in the Chancellor's budget yesterday. Perhaps best summed up by Eric, who thinks that the statement was a masterpiece to be compared only with a fan dance for its lack of precision. I don't know what a fan dance is, perhaps.
I do, we'll tell you later.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later, Samantha, in private.
There's also lots of emails coming in this morning, specifically about pensions. We've had this email, sums up a lot of what the female listeners are emailing in about. It says that I'm a woman born in 1952. I had my pension deferred until September 2014. The goalposts have altered twice, and the first time I didn't even know about it. I will never be able to make up the difference financially, even if I defer taking my pension in 2014. We are a small group who feel ignored and vulnerable. Phil Hurst, also on his pension, he's due to retire in May 2016. His pension was estimated at £161.52 a week. Like many, he says he'll now go on to the flat rate of £144. He works out that he's going to lose over £900 a year. Doesn't sound very fair to him, does it? He writes. And a question, finally, from me for the time being, from 80-year-old Kitty Grove Stevenson, who asks, from the 8th of April 2013, her pension will be £161.17, incorporating £30 guaranteed pension credit. How will I stand, asks Kitty, when the universal pension comes in 2 years' time? I'll throw that over to the panel.
Phil Agulnik, lots of questions there. Could we start with those women who will miss out? They have been featured on Woman's Hour extensively. The women who face this double whammy where they have to wait longer for their pension and then it seems they won't get as much as they thought.
So the double whammy has been a little bit improved by the announcement in the budget that this flat rate pension is coming forward. Okay, because it means to get the flat rate pension, the qualifying years are less and it's more generous than the previous system. There is still a cut-off problem. Okay, so the cut-off now, as Paul just said, for women is if you were born after, I have to get it the right way around, the 6th of April 1953, you're going to be included, but before then you're missing out, and that's sort of inevitable in a reform like this. But this double problem of the acceleration, which they announced in 2011, has been reduced a bit. So there is still a cut-off problem, but it's not quite as severe a problem as it was before for those affected groups.
Paul was taking lots of notes about the other questions.
Yeah, well, yes, I think whenever you draw a line, you get people on the wrong side of it, and I think it does seem very unfortunate for these women. I've also had men now complaining that women get it 2 years younger than they do, and they think that isn't fair. So, you know, the government in a way can't win, but there are bound to be people who lose out. Yes, I think 80-year-old Kitty, who gets £161.17, including pension credit. Now, there is going to be a change in pension credit. This is the means-tested top-up, and it starts with the new pension, so that's coming forward a year too, Phil.
So if you get something called the savings credit element of pension credit, which is for if you've got a low income but you're not on the sort of very bottom, what's called the guarantee element. That's been gradually phased out. So what's actually happening this year is that in general, benefits for pensioners are going up. I think it's at the 2.5% under the triple lock system. Apart from this one group, this group who are on savings credit, because the savings credit aspect is being phased out. So because she's already on it, she won't lose out in April 2016, but over time, people who are on it will find its value will wither.
And Phil is exactly the same as the caller we had. He thinks he's going to get less. In fact, Phil, you won't, because you've got this protected element. Shall we go to a question on a slightly different subject now? Ian's in Barnsley with a question about national insurance.
Oh, hello. I run a small business. I'm actually by one of your one-man bands. At the moment, if I need help, I contract out and get people in for short periods. It's only just cost-effective over hiring somebody. I was wondering how this new £2,000 national insurance might help me actually tip the balance and be able to afford to hire somebody permanently.
Well, I think it will be a help because this is to do with the employer's national insurance. So as you take somebody on and you start paying the employer's national insurance, which some people call the job tax, then up to the first £2,000 of that, you will not have to pay that, and you will claim that back through what's called this real-time information system that's coming in from April. So it will help from that point of view and allow you maybe to take on your first employee there. But I think one thing to be aware of is all the other things that come with taking on an employee. So, you know, obviously you've got flexibility with using the contract staff, that you can turn them on and off when you've got that work available. If you take somebody on, you know, you're taking on a commitment to that person with the relevant employment laws, the holiday pay, the sickness pay, etc., etc. So the £2,000 helps you there, but you will take on an increased cost into your business. So it's really down to yourself to weigh up, have you got enough work for that full-time person throughout the whole of the year for it to be beneficial?
And am I right, Elaine, that it's called £2,000, but if your employer's national insurance bill is less than that, you just get the less than that?
That's right, it's up to £2,000. So, and also it will depend on how much you're paying somebody, because obviously that rate kicks in at a certain amount. So, you know, it's really down to a number crunching exercise, I'm afraid, to see whether it's beneficial and whether it works for your particular business, because it's not just, you know, the £2,000 back.
And you deal with small businesses a great deal. They're one of your main client groups. How do you think, how have they reacted, or how do you think they'll react? Will it help them take that step from being sole trader to employing 1 or 2 or 3 people?
It's a difficult one, because there are a lot of people who operate in this space that really don't want to take that leap. They're quite happy, you know, they're the one-man band like yourself there, who are working and don't want the commitment and the responsibility, because there's nothing worse than taking somebody on and having to lay them off, maybe when the work dries up. So whilst it's good news, I think the initial of going from 0 to 1 employee is a huge task anyway, and not to be underestimated.
Flora?
The only thing I'd add is, if we're going to get this benefit in terms of up to £2,000, and somebody is looking at making the leap from being an employer of no one to an employer of someone, then maybe some of that saving pays for a little bit of help and guidance in how to be an employer, because it's different, isn't it?
It would be nice if some of that help and guidance actually came free from the government to encourage people to start their business.
And Elaine, very briefly, there's just a very simple question. I think this Alan's emailed, he's a pensioner. No one's mentioned that although they're raising the income tax allowance, that won't help people over 65 because theirs are frozen. Is that right?
That's right, yes. I hear this all the time from my own father, who complains that he isn't getting a rise either. So no, I'm afraid there was nothing in there for people who are on the age-related allowance.
Because that's been frozen, and it will wither away as the personal allowance rises.
You're listening to Budget Call. Please ring us on 03700 100 444 if you'd like details about yesterday's announcements and what they might mean for you and your money.
Yes, it's 12:29 just about, and in the next half hour we'll be taking your calls on the Chancellor's budget. What does it mean for you? Do you fear it might mean very little? People trying to buy a home, very small businesses, as we've heard of, motorists, working parents of young children, and indeed beer drinkers may think there was something in it to help them, but will there be? Your questions answered by experts in a moment. But first, here's Martha Carney to tell us about the World at One.
Hi, Paul. Well, like you, we're looking at the budget, in particular the measures announced on housing. One economist tells us it's like giving drugs to a country addicted to debt. The housing minister replies. The schoolgirl who challenged David Cameron about conditions in her classroom takes me on a tour of rat-infested classrooms. We ask an education minister why rebuilding is taking quite so long. How people in Cyprus can't get money out of cash machines. Has the Archbishop of Canterbury signalled a change in policy on homosexuality, and the inquiry into inquiries. That's all coming up in half an hour.
Thanks, Martha. This is Budget Call. It's a phone in answering your questions about the budget and how it might affect you. We have a panel of guests here. Paul, just give us a reminder of who they are.
Well, indeed, there's Flora Maudsley-Barton, who is an independent financial advisor, a financial planner, director of Parsonage Financial Planning. Philip Gulnick is the director of the online benefits calculator, entitled2.com or .co.uk. Elaine Clark, a tax expert, managing director of cheapaccounting.co.uk. She deals with a lot of small businesses, and David Hollingworth, who is our mortgage expert from London and Country.
Let's take some more calls, shall we? This one from William Thomas. He's in Somerset. He wants to know a bit more detail, I think, on what the Chancellor had to say about people who put their money into Equitable Life. Mr. Thomas, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello there.
In 1990, Paul, I joined Equitable Life. And I kept the policy until October last year, when, because it was expected that in December policy payouts would fall as a result of equalising pensions between women and men, I decided to take a pension instead. Am I entitled, because I had a fund during the current financial year, although I don't currently have it, am I entitled to the £5,000 payout?
This is a £5,000 payout to people who had, as I recall, with profits policies with Equitable Life.
That's correct.
Yes.
Pre-1992.
And yours was that, and you're over the age of 60. So from what little we know, because this was a new and slightly unexpected announcement, I don't see why you wouldn't get this, John. It's a £5,000 ex gratia payment. You haven't had any compensation before from Equitable Life. You're exactly the person it's supposed to include. I can't guarantee it will, but you are the person it's supposed to include. Flora.
I was just going to add that William says he's concerned because he's taken benefits already. There has been clarity that the fact that you may have moved on, taken benefits, or even passed away, doesn't detrimentally affect your entitlement to any ex gratia payment.
Oh, right.
Right, so it seems as if you are one of the lucky few thousand, Phil.
One of the lucky. Thank you very yes.
Well, lucky now. I'm not saying you've done well out of Equitable Life, but you're luckier than you were 2 days ago. Phil Gulnick.
And apparently, if you're claiming pension credit, so you've got a lower income and entitled to pension credit, you get an additional £5,000 on top.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
OK, well, good luck. And I think it's going to be paid next year, though. So keep well till then, John, so you can get your money. Thanks very much for calling us.
Nicola Harpin's on the line. She is a self-employed yoga teacher and her husband's a full-time lecturer. Nicola, you're worried about childcare costs. Tell me about that.
Well, at the moment, I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-month-year-old, and I'm just trying to decide what to do about going back to work. We do take advantage of 2 of the 3 sessions that we can get at nursery every week with the old one when I work during the daytime. But with the nature of what I do, mainly I teach in the evenings. My husband works in Nottingham and doesn't usually get in until, if I'm lucky, 7 or 8 in the evening, and the classes usually start at 6. So what I'm trying to find out is, with the change from vouchers, the childcare vouchers that we get at the moment, whether or not I'm actually going to be any better or worse off, whether I can actually claim for babysitting, how it's going to work, whether I need to try and find, which I believe is now an impossible, nursery that's open in the evenings, or a childminder who will take the children, which again is really difficult. So I'm just trying to work out if I'm going to be any worse off under a new scheme.
Nicola, are you currently getting child care vouchers as opposed to your nursery vouchers?
Well, my husband buys them through work and then we pay them to the nursery.
I see. I think this is one for Phil, isn't it?
Hi, Nicola.
Hello.
I just want to check, if you and your husband have a fairly low income, you might be able to get help with childcare through tax credits. Now, because that is always going to be the best route if you qualify. But as I said, you've got to have a lowish income. And the other thing is actually you've both got to work 16 hours a week. So would that apply to you, do you think?
Well, we both do work, he's full-time and I work part-time, but over 16 hours a week. But we went through Citizens Advice and they said that we wouldn't be able to get any tax credits at all. We're just over the threshold.
Okay, yeah. There's two things. There's a special help with childcare through tax credits, and then there's general child tax credit. And if your income is too high for child tax credit, you won't get the extra help through childcare. Though it's important when you work out your entitlement to tax credits that you do include your childcare costs, because they can affect the cut-off point.
Elaine.
Right.
I was just going to pick up there. Obviously, you're not getting some child tax credits, and a little concern and just a little flag to wave about the changes that were implemented from the 7th of January this year on the child benefit tax charge, where obviously if one partner is earning over 50,000, the amount of child benefit is actually going to be reduced. And I didn't, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but if that is applicable with your husband's role, if he's earning over 50,000, you could be losing out there as well. So it may not be good news, I'm afraid.
And Phil, just go through with us the differences, because this new scheme doesn't start till autumn 2015, but insofar as we understand the details, how will it differ? Because Nicola already gets child tax vouchers. Will she be able to carry on? Child care vouchers, will she be able to carry on with those, etc.?
If you've already getting vouchers, you can carry on in the voucher scheme, and it will depend on each individual what they're going to be better off with. Now, the value of the voucher from your husband is worth about £930 a year, and the government are promising that the new voucher will be worth £1,200 per child. Your 3-year-old will be in school because it's only about your 2 months old, so you'd be a bit better off under the new scheme when it comes in 2.5 years' time. The only exception to that would be if you could also qualify for vouchers. Your husband could get a voucher, you could get a voucher, and if you could both do that, you'd actually be better off under the current scheme because you'd both get the current £930.
Nicola's question, though, about whether she can use the husband's vouchers for care in the evenings while she's doing her yoga classes, that's fine,
No,
is it?
The important thing is that the person who does the childcare is registered with Ofsted, and if they're registered with Ofsted, yes, you can, and most childminders are.
Nicola, does that help?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it helps to clarify the situation. But I just need to find someone who works in the evening who's Ofsted registered, which I think is quite challenging for most mums in the same situation as I am, because they just want to work school hours or maybe up until about 6 o'clock. So, but that does answer the question.
Thanks very much for your call, Nicola. I hope that does help and other people who are listening too. And Layla is one of those listening, and she has a question. She's on her mobile. Layla, what's your question?
Hi, yes. Well, the question is related to mortgage lenders considering working in child tax credits as an income. I had a mortgage in place about 6 weeks ago, and it fell through, and it seems that during that 6-week period, it's taken me that time to find another house and put in another offer, and the new house is actually considerably less. The first house was 165, and this the current house is 130. The deal that I had has been withdrawn, and my mortgage advisor has sort of struggled to find me a similar rate. She said that mortgage lenders seem to be a bit wary of including credits as a form of income with the changes that are happening, and so I've just in a matter of 6 weeks, even though the property's considerably less, the rate I've got now is 0.5% more than it was 6 weeks ago. Just wondering if anything in the budget has clarified how the new credit system is going to work and given mortgage lenders any encouragement of in considering that as an income.
David Hollingworth.
I don't think there's anything we can point to specifically from the budget which would give you any reason to hope that that's going to change anytime soon. What we've seen in the market in the last few years are lenders tightening criteria, and of course the regulator has also carried out a large piece of work called the Mortgage Market Review, which will entrench those stricter affordability requirements into mortgage market for the future. I think from what you're saying, it sounds like it is a case of shopping around very much according to your individual circumstances, but things can change because, of course, the child benefit situation has changed recently and lenders have adapted to that now. So many are taking the view that if anyone is earning over the cut-off point, then they won't take any child benefit into account now. So on those kind of tax credits, it can be very different from one lender to another.
The problem seems to be, though, David, that it's not Layla's creditworthiness that's being judged, it's now the government's, because £5,500 of her income was from tax credits, and now lenders seem to be saying, well, we're not sure the government's going to carry on paying them. So that really is very tough on people who, like Layla, who would obviously, just about get the money for that mortgage.
I think this is one of the concerns about how definite and how long-term income might be. Now, actually, you can obviously argue that that's true for many of us. But certainly, if there's not a bunch of employed income alongside with some and the tax credits then bolstering and with a definite period of payment, then it does start to get more difficult and lenders take in less and less.
And from your experience, if you were advising Layla, are there particular lenders or particular mortgages you might want to look at?
I think you'd probably need to go into more detail and look at the whole situation. High street lenders will take things like that into account, so it may well be that another search of the market might improve the kind of rates that are on offer.
Yes, I'm afraid there's not. Sorry, Layla.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just wondering whether is it worth my while maybe holding on a few weeks for things to settle until after the 1st of April, or should I just try and get this mortgage in place as quickly as possible? There is one mortgage lender that will consider the tax credits. Should I just kind of try and proceed with that? It's a 5-year fixed rate. Maybe with the changes that are happening, should I be looking at a shorter term because the forecast is better? The credits will be considered more perhaps in a couple of years, or should I stick with the 5-year straight?
It would be impossible for me to really advise you to say hang on because things could well get better. That could happen but we'll know that with hindsight. I think you should look at what the market's doing at the moment, not expect rapid change in lender criteria because we're not really seeing that happen, and probably go for the right deal from a lender that can deal with your circumstances. It sounds like someone is saying we can lend to you, but the position changed just slightly against you.
Yes, I mean, if you've got an offer, I suppose the answer really is take it because the future may be worse.
It's about losing the property as well, Layla, of course. If you lose that property, what's available after that, we just don't know.
Okay, thanks for your call, Layla. No easy answer, but something to consider there and make your decision.
John Walker has a question about savings. John.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's about the child trust funds, what the Labour government actually set up, and the conversion of them to junior ISAs. Because at the moment, you're not allowed to have a junior ISA if the government set you up a child trust fund. It was mentioned in the budget that they're going to look at converting the child trust fund into a junior ISA. Can you tell me how that's moving on?
Flora?
No. I have no idea how it's moving on, but logically it's got to happen. We've seen it every time before. We saw PEPs combined with ISAs and things like that. Eventually, there is enough of a groundswell to say this is just too inconvenient, and I would imagine as soon as possible, because it's quite inconvenient for us, for our clients as we're planning. People have some kids who got child trust funds, some who've got junior ISAs, but I don't think my convenience is at the top of their priority list at the moment.
I thought it was mentioned in the budget that he would actually started a consultation.
Well, that's exactly right. He said he would consult. He didn't say he was going to do it, and there's going to be nothing in this year's finance bill, but there should be something in the finance bill 2014, which implies to me, Elaine Clark, we're not going to see this for a little while.
Consult normally means they haven't got an answer, or the answer's too difficult in my experience, but then, forgive me, I'm a cynical accountant, so I'm sorry.
Talking about being cynical, my second question was, I had an actual Equitable Life with profits endowment policy taken out before 1992. Am I actually in the compensation scheme?
It seems you are from what they've said, but again, it was a couple of sentences in the budget report.
I'm only 57.
Sorry, then if you're 57, you've got to be over 60. And I'm not sure when the cut-off date for that is, I'm afraid. So you may or you may not be, I think is the answer.
Mine was an endowment policy, not a pension policy.
Right, I think with profits, endowment policies are included. But to be honest, the detail's so small in the budget book that we're not quite sure. But I'm sure the Treasury will be publishing fuller details later. And if you email Moneybox or indeed look at my Twitter feed, you will probably find the answer in the next few days.
Right.
It says in the budget document, if it's helpful, that the £5,000 payment will go to policyholders who bought their Equitable Life with profits annuity before 1st of September 1992.
So it's an annuity, not an actual endowment then?
I don't know the full. I think the answer to that will be in the details. That's what it says in the budget, but as Paul says, it is really two sentences, of which I've given you one.
And it does say you have to be over 60, but again, whether that's today or when it happens in 2014, we don't know. So wait and see, John. I'm sorry, John, and all the other people I'm sure listening, we just at this precise moment don't know all the full details of it.
Right. You're probably not on your own. There's probably people in Westminster in the same boat.
Probably writing the rules as we speak. But hang on there and keep asking, because if you are included, you should be contacted.
Right. Thanks a lot then.
Vicky Tweedy has a question again about pensions. Vicky, are you one of these double whammy women?
Yes.
Tell us your sad story.
My sad story is I'm 72 years of age now. I was widowed in 97. And at the moment, I get my basic state pension, but I also get a pre-97 additional state pension on my husband's contributions. Now, it's very confusing because I don't know whether I'm going to stay on this current system or be transferred over on the new system. If I get transferred over on the new system, it's going to be about £500 a week I'm going to lose. So I don't know whether I will stay on this over at the current system. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
I can stop you there, Vicky. You won't be affected by the new system.
Sorry?
You will not be affected by the new system.
Oh, good.
Vicky, it's about people who are becoming retired. If you're
see.
already in retirement, the new system
Oh,
won't
lovely.
affect you at all.
I mean, I wish the government would sort of be a bit more specific on this, because it's so confusing that they're not sort of telling you the details of these pensions.
I've had all sorts of emails and tweets from all sorts of people exactly like this in this position, Vicky. People very worried, and it's about uncertainty. But if you're already getting a state retirement pension, or indeed you getting it based on your late husband's contribution.
State pension from my husband's
That's right. If you were born before the 11th of April 1951, if you're a man, or before the 6th of April 1953, if you're a woman, you will not be affected. You'll get what you get now, and it will go up with inflation as it always has. So you needn't worry.
Thank you very much. You've made my day.
We always try and do that, don't we?
Oh, you're lovely. Thank you.
A couple of questions by text. John in Norwich says the Chancellor usually hikes up the tax on cigarettes. I didn't hear it mentioned. What did he do?
I think it's going up
He
with
did
inflation.
didn't
It's
he?
going up
Yes.
in the standard way. He didn't mention it because the basic rules will apply.
I think I read somewhere this morning in one of the papers, but I can't.
Here
Don't
you are,
quote
I've
me
got
on the figure. I
cigarettes
think
here.
it was 26 pence.
I've got it in front of me. Duty on all tobacco rose by 2% above inflation from 6 o'clock last night, so this is yesterday. Herbal smoking products, also liable to duty, comes into effect on January the 1st, 2014.
There was also an increase in wine as well, although obviously a reduction in beer, so we might have to change some habits.
Well, all alcohol except beer.
Yes.
Well, Peter from Hounslow has his doubts about beer. He says, does anyone think or believe any pub will really reduce the cost of a pint by a penny? I don't think it will happen anywhere. This change will only help pubs increase their profits by a penny without charging the customers anymore. So there's a challenge to you if you're listening. If your pub has already reduced the cost of a pint by a penny, let us know.
I was talking to a brewer yesterday and he said it's the first cut in beer duty since 1959. That was what he said. But of course, if it's a penny off a pint's about £3 on average. Drink 299 pints and the 300th one will be free. So cheers.
Samantha Fennick is in our phone room where everyone's taking calls and she's been reading emails and tweets. Samantha, can you give us an idea then overall? What have the calls been about? Is there a theme?
There's a lot still coming in about pensions. I'm just casting an eye down the inbox here of all the emails coming in, and I've got lots of people telling me the years they were born and the dates that they were born. So still lots of concern about pensions, but hopefully that they'll all feel a bit more comforted from what we've heard today. On mortgages, Brian Egger thinks the extra relief for mortgages sounds more like a financial instrument than a social need that will only put house prices up. John Buckrell says that John Osborne's statement yesterday that home ownership is beyond the great majority, yet the government continues to take measures such as help with mortgages that will keep prices high. Why, says John, he doesn't know. And then a couple of questions for you. First from Ray Yeovil from Aberystwyth. He's wondering if there were any changes to the lower threshold for an employee paying national insurance. Presumably, he says it's not rising to a £10,000 limit, so an employee will have money taken even if they earn less than £10,000 a year. And another question from Jane. She's been told by her local council in West Yorkshire that the second adult council tax benefit is to be stopped as of next month. She says she heard nothing in the budget yesterday and wonders whether it's true.
So the second adult council tax benefit. Okay.
She's been told it's to stop next month, but didn't hear anything yesterday.
Well, I think Phil knows the answer to that.
OK, the council tax benefit changes are nothing to do with the budget, but they are all happening from April the 1st, or Easter Monday, and every local council are taking over their own scheme for help with council tax. In some local authorities that won't make any difference, but in other local authorities it will. And clearly in this Yorkshire authority they've abolished something called the second adult rebate, which at the moment gives you 7.5% or 15% off of your council tax bill. But the key thing is it is different in each local authority area.
And there are 326 of them in England, so you can tell how complicated it is.
What about that question then from Ray Yeovil? I think he's making the point, isn't he, that people on very low pay may have been taken out of tax, but they are still taxed in the form of national insurance.
That's right. There was no announcement. We've obviously got the figures from April of this year, so April 2013-14, but we don't yet know what's going to happen with national insurance rates in 14-15 when this £10,000 rate will apply. So yes, you get the benefit from the tax, but the national insurance, the two just aren't aligned. And actually, to go through the figures now is quite complicated to talk them through on the radio. But no, that you will still be paying national insurance.
I think it starts next year at 7,750, whereas tax is 9,440. Phil's nodding.
Yes, that's correct. 7,750 if you annualise it, and the tax is 9,440. From this April.
So there's a band of nearly £2,000 where you're paying 12%, but you're not paying income tax of 20%.
It seems ridiculous not to bring the two in line. And also, if you're self-employed, sole trader or whatever, the Class 4 national insurance obviously starts at a similar rate of 7,755. You start paying 9% Class 4 national insurance.
James Charles Hall is thinking of starting his own business and has a question. James, what's your question?
Yes, what has this budget done for anybody wanting to start their own business? Anything new in it from that point of view?
The quick answer is nothing, really, I'm afraid. I wish I could tell you more, and please don't shoot the messenger, but there was very, very little in it for somebody trying to get a new business off the ground.
There was the national insurance,
That's if
£2,000
you're
that you mentioned
taking on
earlier.
somebody, but obviously in James's situation, just starting off on his own, it's probably just going to be him, so there isn't much to really tell him. So I'm sorry, James.
Thank you for that, James.
Thank you.
Yes, a man thanking us for telling him that there was nothing in the budget. But a lot of people are saying that. People who were very hard up, they think there isn't really very much.
It's not our
in the
budget anyway, Paul. We didn't write the budget.
No, we didn't. We didn't, Winifred. So we don't have to apologise.
No, don't feel too sorry.
Ask George Osborne to apologise. And Judy is calling us from Southend-on-Sea. Judy, your question.
Oh, good morning. I wonder if you could explain to me what the Chancellor is doing to the 10% tax rate on savings, especially for people over 65 who aren't benefiting from the allowance increase, the normal allowance increase, sorry.
Flora, you're looking as if you know.
The Chancellor said he was...
Well, the Chancellor was making a bit of a political point, as I understand it. He said the 10% tax on savings, which is a special rate for people who are just above the limit.
Yes.
And he was saying that he was telling the Labour opposition that was now 0%. And some of us, including me, thought at the time he might have been scrapping this 10% rate. It only applies to savings when they're just above the personal allowance.
In that category.
Yeah. Elaine.
Unfortunately, again, it's one of these where we haven't quite got the full detail of that yet, and maybe Paul can tweet it, in the next day or so. I don't know if you're on Twitter or can check on a website.
I'm not on Twitter, no.
Well, if you could check on a website, or if you can leave your contact details, what we can do is have a look at this and get back to you.
That would be very kind.
No problem.
Obviously, it looked as though I might be losing that benefit.
The devil is in the detail, and the devil hasn't announced the detail yet, I'm afraid.
I thought there was no change.
The revenue said...
Can I leave my details for someone to...
Yeah, you can later. The revenue told me that they were actually not changing it, and the Chancellor was being not less than clear. Well, they didn't say that. I'm saying it.
Well, that is an end to it, I'm afraid, because we're out of time. It seems, David Hollingworth, the headline very much has been about the boost for housing.
I think it was a surprise how far it's gone, and we'll have to wait and see. But I think the guarantee in particular could have very distinct ramifications and improve availability. So I think first-time buyers and those struggling to move have got something to hope for.
OK, well, we have run out of time. Thanks for your calls, tweets and texts, and thanks to Flora Maudsley Barton, Phil Agalnick, Elaine Clark, and, who you've just heard, David Hollingworth.